so next up we do have our delegation. So we have a delegation this evening from Sarah. Are you on your own tonight, Sarah? I am. Okay. I just wanted to make sure.
Well, certainly not on my own.
Sorry. Sorry, at the podium. I wasn't sure if Natasha was joining us as well.
No,
okay.
We were double booked today. So
okay, sounds good. All right, so we have Sarah Peart from Parents Against Racism. So I invite you to join us at the podium. As you know, you are allowed up to 10 minutes for your presentation. Trustees will have up to 10 minutes for questions of clarification. Please let me know when you are ready to start. Director Dance will start the timer. Director Dance will provide you with a hand signal when there are 2 minutes remaining of your presentation. All right.
Okay, I'm ready to start. So good evening, and thank you for having us. We had hoped to do much more delegating this year, similar to what you were accustomed to last year, but unfortunately we've been so busy with intakes, we have not been able to make time to attend. We've hit 60 intakes this year already, and still 6 weeks to go. So we will be coming back to present on our annual report, but before we did that, we wanted to focus a little bit on the Simcoe County District School Board DEI strategic priorities. We understand, as I'm sure you have all come to learn, that the education system is built on oppressive practices. To truly achieve what we're set out to do with these strategic priorities, there must be intention, true commitment, action, and we hope that following this delegation, in combination with the many emails that we CC you all on in hopes of drawing attention to the issues our students are facing, we can begin to get some more real change and have you guys really action these strategic priorities. So before I start, I just want to clarify in simple terms. An oppressive system targets those from marginalized communities that they're treated unfairly, they have their voice shut down, they're tone policed, they lack opportunities, they don't see themselves represented, they have a limited power or control within the system, in comparison to those that have power, that allow for these type of oppressive practices to happen. A good example to give you guys some context is if you think about trying to navigate an accessible space. So, you know, we're walking individuals, able-bodied individuals, and we're thinking about how do we make this accessible. No matter how accessible we can make it, we'll never fully understand the benefits to that accessibility unless you have lived a life in a wheelchair. This was made very aware to our President Natasha when she broke her ankle last year. And even still, after weeks in a cast, having to battle accessibility issues and having that brought very forward to her mind, she's still only glimpsing a touch of what it really feels like to be faced with inaccessibility. And that's what our kids are going through right now. And I'm sorry, but there is not there's maybe a few people in this room that can truly understand what our children are going through. And without the deep-rooted understanding, you can't possibly begin to prioritize it at a level that we need you to make change. A simple example of how Simcoe County District School Board creates oppressive practices that limit our families is oftentimes during system navigation meetings, we show up and an agenda has been set by the administrator or the educator. This is just to give some context, a family that has had ongoing issues within the school. They are bringing their concerns to the board, and the board feels that they have the right to control the agenda of that meeting. It's oppressive. You can't agendacize our family's trauma. You can't do it. Simcoe County District School Board equity and inclusion commitments and examples. I'm going to take us through the three top priorities that you guys have laid out, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some examples that we've seen over this past school year that demonstrates the oppressive practices that are not aligning with these priorities. So the first one is we value the diversity and identity of our students and staff. We have seen blatant evidence that although there is change being made, it's not fast enough, and that oppressive practices are happening on a regular. Issues are ignored or downplayed. Cultural backgrounds are not taken into consideration when investigating. There's discrimination at the staffing level, profiling. Students are being targeted and treated differently based on their ethnicity. And we have some really specific examples of that. First one is the lack of support from this board to the Muslim and Palestinian community when the retaliation from Israel on Palestine that impacted tens of thousands of innocent individuals within Palestine. You can't support one side without supporting another. There are children within our schools right now that are Palestinian and have not seen themselves represented, seen their peoples cared about, or supported in any way, shape, or form, and that is blatant discrimination. So that's number one. Tone policing parents. We've actually been witness to conversations where educators and administrators tell parents, if you keep talking over me, I am going to hang up. We are not going to be speaking over each other. These are authoritative manners, and an educator should be listening in active, empathetic listening skills and not trying to dictate how someone speaks or how their traumatic experience is expressed. Investigations, an investigation that was done after a violent act on a Muslim boy. The investigation was not taken with the lens of Islamophobia. During the conversation with administration, it was absolutely denied that Islamophobia could play a factor in that attack. And in front of the victim and their family, they were victim blamed by the leaders of that school. Completely oppressive, racist. It can't happen. We have to be teaching our educators and leaders of the school how to participate if they are going to be conducting these investigations from a level of cultural awareness and to be taking into account all of the extenuating circumstances that could have led to that incident. The second one is we uphold principles of respect for human rights and ensure equity of access and opportunity. Students from marginalized communities consistently have less access to educational resources. We have to advocate regularly for this. Weekly, we're getting intakes. And sometimes it takes 5 and 6 emails to get proper resolution and support for our families. If this wasn't the case, our team wouldn't exist, because families would be able to ask for help and they wouldn't feel the need to enlist advocates. Disciplinary action is disproportionately impacting our students, and they're being targeted. They're being internal biases from staff is being projected onto our students, whether knowingly or unknowingly. It's happening, and we need it addressed. One example is 2 students that have been forced to stay home for at-home learning as a result of the harm that's being caused during their in-school experience have been offered 5 hours each of educational instruction to compensate 6 hours, that's a week, to compensate for 6 hours a day of educating that they are not choosing to be absent from. This has actually come to a safety matter. Another example, sorry. Superintendent speaking to parents that are newcomers to Canada and using phonetics and tone and pace of tone that is incredibly disrespectful. I don't know if you all like being spoken to like this, but I don't. And I've witnessed it, and it comes from the governing bodies of members that work for this board, and it has to stop. I'm going to speed up a little bit and just talk about the third point, which is we prioritize safety and promote inclusive, respectful learning and working environments. We have a Black child that we're currently supporting that is having isolation and exclusion practices without a proper behavior tracking documentation. This documentation is required in the Education Act, and it's missing from that child's file. The psycho-ed assessment was embedded with anti-Black racism, even describing his home life prior to immigrating to Canada in a way that upholds white supremacy and anti-Black racism with no founded grounds. There is no way someone that works at this board could know what took place in another country. So there are real gaps to your system here. So what we need is we need to establish metrics, equity metrics and targets. We need specific metrics relating to diversity, equity, and inclusion, such as increasing representation, understanding how you guys are hiring. What's the percentage of people that you want to hire within each demographic? Where are you recruiting, et cetera? You need a plan in order to make these goals happen. We're really tired of the word of mouth that's being delivered of we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and then there's no plan in place. We need external audits and reviews. We'd like to, actually, there's one more thing I want to touch on here quickly. You guys have the Turner audit, but why are the findings not made public? Why are we hiding behind the audits that have taken place? And in closing, since I've run out of time, we really need you guys to be accountable to somebody else. It cannot continue to be you. Your silence and compliance is harming our children. Enough is enough.
Thank you very much for your presentation. All right, so at this time, I will ask if trustees have any questions of clarification for Ms. Peart. Okay, would you like to come back to the podium? All right, first I saw Vice Chair Powell. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much for your presentation. You said you had 60 intakes this year. Can you explain what that is?
60, which, yes, we can. So we do system navigating for families. We don't just navigate the education system, but it is where we've started and where a majority of our intakes come from. So a family will come to us and they're experiencing some type of concern, whether it be mistreatment or lack of resources, their child's, there's been some type of breakdown of trust between the educators, the board, and the family. And we act as a advocate for the family. We can consult and just guide them. There's oftentimes families are happy to take that on themselves. They just need some guidance. And it goes right up into organizing meetings and being sort of the voice of the family throughout that navigation process until we can find a resolution.
All right, thank you. Yes. So what is the corporate structure of PARSC? Is it a charity or?
We're a nonprofit.
Is it a registered nonprofit?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. I believe it's Trustee Beitz, and then I'll come to Trustee Wilson.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation today. I really appreciate it. I love your idea about the more audits. I remember back in September being like, where is this Turner audit? And it is there, but it's kind of hard to find. And I think we have some plans to address maybe that going forward. I think that's great. I like your analogy about accessibility. I was wondering if you have any experience with our accessibility committee and everything and the work they do, and I just wanted to maybe suggest maybe you could attend one of their committees or one of their audits, because they literally walk around schools and do exactly that. And I'm wondering if there is a way we could, take those accessibility audits and do it for EDI and stuff, because it's people with disabilities. They walk around, they tell us, they point out what's wrong, and it's so educational. It's such a positive experience. So I just like to encourage you maybe to check out that committee, because it's really good work, and then maybe see if, just an idea I had, that maybe we could see how maybe we could do the same thing for this. Anyway.
So I love that idea. And of course, PARSC as an organization would be happy to create a proposal and work with the board on any policy revision, audit, et cetera. There are tons of DI auditors that can come into the board and do those type of audits. I would ask that the individuals on this governing body board help to make that decision. It should definitely not be an outside agency, nonprofit. I can certainly, just from interest's sake, attend that committee, but I hope you can appreciate I have a full-time job. This is a part-time job, and we've supported as I mentioned, 150 of your families in the last 2.5 school years. I don't have time for any other committees at this time, but I do encourage the board to get an audit like that going ASAP. And I had to rush through one of my points, but that was it. We need more equity audits that are done by external third-party organizations that are led and owned by the demographics that you are trying to understand the experiences from within.
Thank you. Question, Trustee Wilson?
Yeah, thank you to you, the chair, and thank you for bringing this information to us today as a board. So one of the pieces of information you talked about a specific child in the missing behavior. So I wanted to ask a little bit about that. Is that something that typically is in a file? Is that something that the parent can have access to, and like just a little bit about that? So, because if it's missing, I mean, that's obviously a red flag.
Absolutely, it is. So typically, there are guidelines before the board, and again, you all are the professionals. I have just fallen into this work out of passion and love for my children. I will do my best to answer. I wish Natasha was here because she'd have a much more accurate answer for you, but there's guidelines and principles before you can exclude children and isolate them and use like physical restraint measures on them. They have to have been deemed a specific type of behavioral risk to the educators, and the behavioral assessment needs to be done before those type of practices are started with that child. And that behavioral assessment was non-existent. They were basing it off of a few individual incidences that were vaguely reported by the internal staff at the school. And the psych ed was horrific. The language used within that, and I would, I am sure we could get a release that would give the parent, the parent could allow us to share more detail with you. But I will summarize it by saying it was something along the lines of, this child was mistreated by their mother in Jamaica. And I would love to know how an educator in Ontario that never lived with that child, where they came from, knows that information. So there was some really harmful language, and it paints a picture of a bias that's been used to develop that documentation. And now we have a child that is traumatized, newcomer to Canada, locked in a room, being restrained when they act out. I think we could, if you put me in a room, I don't think you'd like to see what would happen, and lock me up and try to restrain. It's not good. What we're doing to these kids is harmful.
Follow up, Trustee Wilson?
Yeah, just so you said, so there was I don't want to get into too much details at this meeting here, but so you said that there was this assessment that was done that was the harmful language, because I'm really concerned about the process, because that's something that's really can be sort of investigated. As you said, if there was supposed to be something that's done before that, this can happen. Mm-hmm. I mean, those are things that need to be followed so that there isn't somebody's human rights and are not being violated. And I was just curious, what is the age of this child that we're talking about?
I don't have that information off the top. I'd also want to be conscious of there are individuals in the room that have participated in these meetings, and I just want to be conscious of privacy, but we can have an off-record conversation as well. I would like to just comment on that process is a problem here. We've recently seen the escalation process where on your board page, it takes you through 5 steps. Step 1 being go to your educator, principal, etc., all the way up to director dance. And the parent has followed those steps, and an investigation at the director level was refused. They've then brought their concern to Chair Lloyd, and they were refused a meeting. And this is a process. There's a lot of processes that are being, I don't know if you can violate a process, but they're not being followed. They're definitely not being followed.
Thank you. Just as a reminder to trustees asking questions, I believe we have about 3 minutes left. We have 10 minutes for questions of clarification. But Trustee Foley, I saw you next.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to the delegate. You've made a considerable number of troubling allegations, and I mean, have you shared all this information with the board in the past?
We have been CCing trustees on some of these emails that are going out. So we have shared with the ministry, we have shared with the board, with the directors. Yes, we have shared.
Okay. I mean, one of the things you talk about are oppressive practices. And could you elaborate a little bit more on that?
We don't have enough time. I would love to elaborate more on that. We have been denied a meeting with you all. Last year, I wrote a very specific email asking to come together as a group and hear about how you were going to apply the information that you received in the 9 delegations that we did in the 2022-2023 school year. And I was denied that meeting and referred to the diversity committee that was handpicked by the board. And I didn't even get to mention that. Some of the practice, that's an oppressive practice. You have a public committee that is there to consult and recommend on all things DEI, but they are hand-selected from people within the board. That committee should be made up openly of community partners that have a vested interest in providing the feedback that the community is actually wanting to share.
Thank you. But getting back to my point about oppressive practices, you could always email me and share that with me, and I'd appreciate it.
I will do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I think we got like 1 minute left. Sorry, I'm just trying to see behind you, make sure I'm not missing anyone. Any questions online? I'm not seeing any hands up there. Okay, perfect. All right. Any further questions or comments from trustees? Okay, sorry, not questions or comments, questions of clarification. All right. Well, thank you very much for your presentation. As you know, the chairperson may receive your submission as information, refer it to the Director of Education for review and action, or refer it to a standing committee for review and a report. So I will be accepting your delegation as information. And I thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for your questions. And if anyone wants to email us for more information, I would be happy to share openly and even request the permission from parents to go into detail. So please do feel free to reach out.
Thank you.